The festival season had come to Ode village, and everyone was buzzing with excitement. The air was filled with the smell of fresh yams, cassava, and millet, mixed with the scent of roasting meats and sweet palm wine. Drumming echoed through the village as women cooked big meals and men sharpened their machetes for the celebration. My name is Sowa. This is one of my stories. Please subscribe to Adventures of Sowa to enjoy captivating stories about me and the beauty of Africa. This was the time of the year when the village was alive with bright colors, music, and dancing. It was a season to celebrate the gods for a good harvest. The streets were full of stalls selling colorful beads, fabrics, and trinkets, and everyone was laughing and enjoying themselves. But this year, there was a bit of a worry. The Agaba masquerade, the most feared spirit of the village, was set to appear. The Agaba showed up only once a year during the festival and was both awe-inspiring and terrifying. It wore yellow and black raffia strips around its waist and legs, with long red and black ostrich feathers covering its upper body. A calabash on its head spewed blazing fire, a sight that made everyone shiver. In Ode village, the Agaba was seen as both a bringer of luck and a sign of destiny. This year, though my friends and I were more interested in squirrel hunting, the bush was full of them, and the festival was the perfect excuse for our little adventure. No one would notice us sneaking off into the bush with all the festival excitement going on. But just as we were about to leave, my mother stopped us. She had a knack for sensing trouble, and she knew that look in our eyes meant we were up to something. "Where are you boys going?" she asked, hands on her hips, a knowing smile on her face. "We are just heading to the bush, Mama," I said, trying to sound casual. "It's squirrel season, remember?" My mother looked at us doubtfully and said, "The bush? On the day the Agaba comes out? Are you sure you are brave enough to face it if it appears?" The mention of the Agaba made us hesitate. We had heard stories and felt the village's fear whenever the Agaba showed up. But we were determined to go, and nothing, not even the Agaba, would stop us. Seeing our resolve, my mother sighed. "All right," she said, "but before you go, come sit under the cashew tree. I have a story to tell you." Reluctantly, we put down our catapults and gathered under the old cashew tree, a favorite spot where we often listened to elders' tales. The tree was ancient and had seen many seasons, festivals, and stories. My mother began her story, her voice soothing and captivating. "Long ago, when our village of Ode was young, there was a great king in the neighboring village of Ama. He was powerful and his land was fertile. Ama was envied by all the surrounding villages. They are known for war and conquest. The king of Ama had a son, Amudo, who was strong and brave like his father, but also kind-hearted. The king of Ode was worried that one day Ama's warriors might come for us. So he came up with a plan to make peace with Ama by offering the most beautiful maidens from Ode. The king of Ama agreed, and his son would choose his bride from them. In return, Ama would protect Ode. Among the maidens was Ogolu, the daughter of Nze Odenga, a powerful man in our village. Ogolu was beautiful, but also proud, arrogant, and quick to anger. Many feared her just as they did her father. One day, as Ogolu and her bodyguards were walking down the road, They encountered some young ladies returning from the stream where they had been washing their clothes. These young women, perhaps out of distraction or fear, passed Ogolu without greeting her. Offended, Ogolu ordered her guards to pour away their big bowls containing the freshly washed clothing. The guards obeyed without hesitation, sending the clean clothes tumbling into the dirt. "Have you forgotten? It's a must you kneel when I pass by," Ogolu said coldly. She then commanded the young ladies to kneel down on the road until she had passed, a display of authority and pride that left the women trembling. Ogolu had a friend, Udemma, who was also beautiful but very kind. Udemma was gentle and treated everyone with kindness. Despite their differences, Ogolu and Udemma were close friends. One day, Udemma was sent to the bush by her mother to gather snails for the evening meal preparation. While she was hunting for the snails, she noticed a young man sitting on one of the fallen branches in the bush. He was wearing a buka adorned with traditional braided necklaces, exuding an aura of dominance she had never seen before. Despite his imposing presence, the man appeared lost. Udemma wasn't afraid of him. Instead, she was captivated by his aura. She approached him and asked, "What are you doing alone in the middle of the bush? It seems you are not from here." The young man explained that he had sought to escape family pressures and had inadvertently lost his way in the forest. His father was eager to force him into something he didn't want, but he didn't disclose where he came from. Udemma offered to guide him back to familiar road if he would help carry the basket of snails she had picked. As they walked out of the forest, the young man carried the basket for her. They became engrossed in conversation, and Udemma found herself developing feelings for him. Another day, when Udemma went to visit her friend Ogolu, she was surprised to see the same young man with her. It was then that they both learned the truth. The young man was Amudo, the prince of Ama village, and Ogolu was the one choosing to marry him. Amudo was impressed by Udemma's kindness but was promised to Ogolu, so he kept his feelings hidden. Since the king of Ode doesn't have a female issue, the decision for Prince Amudo to marry Nze Odenga's daughter Ogolu was orchestrated by Odenga himself. He is powerful because he also a member of King's cabinet. Before we continue, please click the subscribe button below for more adventures of Sowa. Have you done that? Okay, let's continue. The Agaba masquerade was supposed to be the one to choose a maiden for the Prince of Ode, as directed by the gods. Despite its fearsome appearance, if its fire blazed in front of a maiden's house, it meant she was meant to marry a prince. If only smoke came out, it was just a ceremonial visit. This means that if the prince was from a neighboring village and the king of Ode doesn't have a princess, then the Agaba masquerade just as well shall choose a random maiden for the prince from the neighboring village. But instead, the king had issued that the masquerade has to go to Odenga's house bearing a blazing fire. People gossiped that this was the first time Ode's village wanted to walk against the order of the gods. But who dared to question the Nze Odenga's handwork? As the wedding approached, Ogolu's pride grew. She treated villagers poorly, forcing them to kneel and punishing anyone who looked at her. The villagers whispered, but feared her father's wrath. But Amudo saw Ogolu's cruelty and began to doubt marrying her. He sought comfort from Udemma, who was also torn. She didn't want to betray her friend, but couldn't deny her own feeling for Amudo. One day, the prince told Udemma to advise Ogolu to change, or she might lose him. This caused a rift between the friends, with Ogolu accusing Udemma of trying to steal her man. Udemma went to Amudo in tears, asking him to stay away from her from now on, because he had caused trouble between her and Ogolu. As she tried to leave, her leg got stuck on a root, and she almost fell. But Amudo the warrior caught her. They locked eyes, but Udemma didn't want to admit her feelings and pushed him away, hurrying off. The day of the Agaba's appearance arrived, and the village was in a frenzy. The Agaba was supposed to visit the Udenga's house. If the fire blazed from each calabash, Ogolu was meant to marry the prince. The villagers gathered outside, waiting. But when Udemma was about to join them, something strange happened. The Agaba appeared at Udemma's house instead of in the Udenga's house. Fire blazing from each calabash. The villagers were shocked. What could it mean? The Agaba never made mistakes. So its appearance at Udemma's compound meant she was meant to marry the prince. Ogolu was furious and accused Udemma of betrayal. But Amudo, seeing the truth in the Agaba's choice, stood by Udemma and asked for her hand in marriage. Nze Odenga was humiliated, and Ogolu swore to never forgive Udemma. But the villagers celebrated, knowing the Agaba's choice was the will of the gods. Amudo and Udemma's marriage was celebrated with great joy, and peace came between the two villages. And Ogolu, she disappeared from the village, never to be seen again. Some say she went to live in the forest as a spirit of the trees, trapped in her pride and anger. Others say she traveled far away and lived in solitude. But the story of Agaba and the prince reminds us that true beauty is in the heart, not just the face. As my mother finished her story, I realized we had forgotten about our squirrel hunt. We were so engrossed in her tale that the idea of going into the bush lost its charm. Even Kofi and Danso, who usually loved adventures, were happy to stay under the cashew tree. I almost felt like I could see the masquerade and feel the heat of the flames. Suddenly, I noticed something surprising. The Agaba masquerade was actually standing before us. His presence was as impressive and intimidating as the story described, and the flames from his calabash flickered ominously. Panic broke out. "Masquerade! Masquerade!" I yelled, making everyone scatter. My mother has disappeared into the house, probably to find my father. My sister cried out in fear, and Danso and Kofi ran behind the house. "I don't want to marry the prince! I don't want to marry the prince!" my sister cried. In the chaos, I felt a rush of adrenaline. The Agaba's powerful presence was both thrilling and frightening. Watching the masquerade, I realized that the calabash fire no longer meant a marriage alliance. The tradition has changed, and the prince's fate was no longer tied to the flames. Later, when things calmed down, my father came to pay his respects to the masquerade. He approached with a sense of reverence, carrying a small offering of yams and palm wine. The Agaba, towering in silence, accepted the tribute with a solemn nod, the flames from its calabash casting long, flickering shadows on the ground. This is the end of my story. Please, if you like it, I hope you subscribe. Thanks.